This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
It is golf week on the Moonlight Graham Show. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Tim Flattery, and our Moonlighter for today is my favorite golf writer, a guy by the name of Tom Coyne. Tom is a senior writer at the Golfers Journal. He currently does some podcasts for them as well, and he has written the following books. He has written A Gentleman's Game, Paper Tiger, A Course Called Ireland, and A Course Called Scotland. All of them are fantastic. Now, I got introduced to Tom Coyne about a year ago when a friend of mine, Don Appleby, said, "You have got to read this book, A Course Called Ireland," and he sent it to me. And now that book is being passed around. I don't even know where that book is right now because it's currently being passed around from friend to friend, and everybody who has read it has loved it. In the book, A Course Called Ireland, Tom Coyne, who of course is Irish by nature, he's a tall redheaded guy, really good chap, and he went over to Ireland and he walked the entire country of Ireland from town to town and playing all the little links courses across the whole country of Ireland on his way. And it's really a fascinating book. It's a fascinating story. And as you guys know, if you've been following this podcast, I really love kind of these putting yourself in the experience type of stories. You know, we've done that some here on this podcast with kind of our Moonlight Marathon, or when I caddied for Sam Moret, or when we played a game at the Field of Dreams. I love these experience type books or podcast, and that's what Tom Coyne does. In the book Paper Tiger, he hires a strength coach, hires a swing coach, tries to make the PGA Tour. In his book A Course Called Scotland, he plays all of the courses across Scotland in preparation to try to qualify for the British Open. His next book that's coming out in 2021, it's going to be called A Course Called America, where he plays every U.S. Open course ever in the United States and at least one course in all 50 states. And I can't wait for that book as well. So Tom Coyne's storytelling and writing really appeals to me, and it was so fun to get him on the podcast to talk about his experiences over in Ireland and Scotland, his experiences in the game of golf, and also his upcoming book, A Course Called America. I think any of those books would be great Father's Day presents as we approach Father's Day here. And I think you guys are really going to love this conversation with Tom Coyne. He is a great ambassador for the game of golf, and I was really happy that we were able to get him on the podcast. And if you like what we're doing here on the Moonlight Graham Show, guys, make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever it is that you get your podcast. Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. Subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show, and you know the drill. Leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode with golf writer Tom Coyne. This week's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is brought to you by the People's Company. That's right, they are back as a sponsor because so often I hear from farmers throughout Iowa and throughout the Midwest who are listening to the podcast while they are planting, while they are harvesting. They're in their tractors, they're in their combines, which makes the People's Company a perfect partner for the Moonlight Graham Show here. As you guys probably well know, the People's Company is based in West Des Moines, Iowa, but they've really grown to be one of the nation's leading providers in land brokerage, land management, land appraisal, and investment services. These guys, and I know Andrew Zelmer and Matt Adams over there at the People's Company, these guys live and breathe farmland, farm management, and they know that industry better than anybody. So if you're looking to buy a farm, sell a farm, having an auction coming up, call the People's Company. They are the best in the business. Check them out at peoplescompany.com. Well, Tom Coyne, I'll say you're a golf enthusiast joining the podcast. Tom, as you know, we're recording this show from Iowa, and your upcoming book, A Course Called America, you're visiting all 50 states, playing all of the U.S. Open courses, but a course in particular in every state. Iowa, of course, has not hosted a U.S. Open. So what course did you play when you visited the great state of Iowa?
It was. Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me. And it is a great state. Loved my time there. And I've got my map out here in front of me. And I came up from Kansas City. and rolled into Des Moines. No, that's Des Moines. And Waveland I just absolutely loved. Just thought it was fantastic. You do these trips in these books and you're hoping to be surprised, right? You have ideas about what a lot of these places are going to be like. And, I have no idea. And I'm a Philly guy and haven't played a ton of golf in America. And that was a big reason of wanting to do an America book. I've done Ireland and Scotland and things, but, wanted to get out and see my own country. So I know nothing about Iowa. And I'm not even sure how I decided to play Waveland. But, I must have been sort of a highly ranked public, or I just I definitely needed a course in Des Moines because that's where I was staying that night. So, and what a fortuitous find. It was just, I absolutely loved it. You don't think of Iowa, I don't know if I would, I don't think of it having that kind of topography in my imagination. So to get out there in those hills,
right,
and that up and down, I mean, it is Waveland, literally. I just thought, if this is your local municipal course, I mean, you've got it made in Des Moines.
It is a great municipal course. It's one of the oldest, I think, in the state. So it's got a great old clubhouse. It's got a lot of character to it. And as I'm reading your books and kind of following your Twitter account, seeing all the golf you're playing, one of the things I wonder is you probably get asked about specific courses all the time. How do you remember them, or do you take notes as you're playing these courses so it draws back your memory?
I just make it up most of the time. It's easier. No, I take notes while I'm playing, like on my scorecard. If a hole stands out to me, it's nice now when, doing the Ireland book, I had kind of a big camera with me all the time. Scotland and America, it's just on your phone, right? So it's so easy to just be snapping pictures to jog your memory. This trip, the America trip, I was really busy chronicling it on Instagram. So, now that I'm writing that book, just sort of going through my Instagram feed is a great reminder of certain holes or certain places. I mean, I don't have tremendous hole by hole recall. I'm not one of those people, and I'm always amazed when I meet these people who can play a course once and then afterwards talk to you about on the 12th hole, that was so crazy, that slope or whatever, and the 7th green was this. And in my head, I have to go back and 1, 2, and try and remember. Right. But I always sort of remember and capture that sort of gut feeling, that reaction that you have really after you've left. Because, I'm writing every night during my travels. And so it's where am I emotionally about this course after having, traveled to play it? Would I travel there again? Would I make the effort? Was there something about it that I have to make sure I capture? So, so I do write every night and try and I'm good at recalling conversations. So those are easy to, get into the book or get into my journal. But my recall for specific holes a lot of times is aided by going back online and looking through the course's website or map and remembering, okay, that's the hole that I'm seeing in my imagination, so that I can tell you that was the 14th at such and such. That takes so it looks easy in the book, but it takes research. No, I'm not just recalling hole by hole. Tron Carter on No Laying Up can actually do that. It's really annoying.
Was that trip to Iowa when you played Waveland, is that the only time you've played golf here in the state of Iowa?
It is. It's the only time I've been in the state of Iowa.
Really?
And yeah, it was the only time that I've been in so many states. And that was really the impetus for doing this book, because, it got to the point where, I'd go to, say, a speaking event or something, and people would ask me my favorite course, and I'd list 12 courses that nobody'd ever heard of in the Highlands of Scotland or on the west coast of Ireland, or, and they'd ask, well, what about America? And, and it just became more evident to me that Philadelphia is a great golf section and great history here. And I've been able to play all the courses here. I grew up here. My resume was really thin. And I thought, I know Ireland and Scotland better than I know my own country. And why don't I go discover America? It's like one of those things, like when you live in a city, you never go to the museums until your family from out of town is there, and it's like, why don't I see my own country? And especially during this time, it's such an interesting and challenging time. And I wanted to kind of go figure out what's going on. What rather than sit in Philadelphia on the couch and think I know what people in Colorado or Montana are like, I should go there and meet them. And by the way, the people in Iowa are the best.
There you go.
And I say that on all my podcasts. No, but they really, like, it was, I remember the pro at Waveland, I don't know if his name was Rocky, I'll have to check my notes, was just, like, so wonderful and welcoming, and we had a blast. I wish I could have spent a little more time there.
One of the things that I love so much about your book in Scotland was you went through a little bit about how they got to 18 holes as a number in the origination of golf. And you played a lot of courses with like 10 holes and 20 holes and, 18 holes, 19 holes. And I thought that story was so unique. And you probably didn't find anything like that here in America. But did you find any courses here in America that weren't your standard 9 or 18 holes?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No, I did. A lot of them are short courses, but that's really the hot thing right now in golf, right? I mean, so 17 holes at Sand Valley on their short course, 13 at Bandon Dunes on the preserve. So some of that. Found a lot of great 9-holers, and then I was just writing about today, the Ohoopee Match Club in Georgia has 22 holes. So that's a really cool spot, and that's set up in 2 different routings. It has an 18-hole routing, and then it has this thing called the Whiskey Loop, which is a par 69 routing where you play the extra 4 holes and then one other hole played from a different direction. So a really creative Gil Hans routing, and just a super cool place. It's a funky course deliberately. They created it for match play only. There's no handicap index on the cards. Par doesn't really matter. Like on the card, it says like par on a hole is like 4.5. Like it's arbitrary because it's really built for matches. And so that was an interesting place with a weird number of holes. But you're definitely more likely to find that in Scotland, where one of my favorite courses in the world is a place called Shishkin on the Isle of Arran, and you have 12 holes there, and I've written a lot about that place and absolutely love it. I think 12 is actually the perfect number of golf holes.
That's what I was going to ask. What do you think is the perfect number? I think like 12 or 14 is about right for me. Usually by about 15 or 16, I'm ready to throw something in the lake.
12 is good because you get the front 6 and the back 6, so it's good for matches. Well, we could do any number that would be good for matches, but there's something about 12. Like 9's not enough because 9's sort of so used to playing 18. It just playing 12 holes at Shishkin, like 2.5 hours. I felt like I'd actually played a round of golf, and I just was like, that is sort of the, I called it the Goldilocks, ideal. Like that just hit me just right. And we'll see if, and what's also cool, if you need to get that 18-hole score in, just play the front 6 again or whatever. So
yeah, it's divisible.
12 is where it's at.
You played so many rounds, right? And you're playing them really quickly most days because sometimes you're playing 36 or 54 holes in a day. How much leeway are you giving yourself on the scorecard? Like, are you using the foot wedge? You know what I mean? Like, 'cause one thing I like about your books is you keep score, right? And then I can go to the back of the book and I can look at what Tom Coyne did at every course, and I love that. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a baseball guy, so I love the numbers side of it. So I love that you keep score, but I also am wondering, like, how much is he cheating?
That dirty cheat, Coyne. No, to be honest, it's funny. If I'm playing alone, which I am often on these trips, Scotland and Ireland, probably even more than America. I was lucky to have a lot of people join me in America. But if I'm playing alone, I'm really kind of uptight about not giving putts and counting every stroke. Like, because what's the point? If you're already playing by yourself, which kind of stinks, and if you're just going to kind of make up numbers, why are you even out there? So I'm probably more of a stickler when I'm playing alone. And then if I'm playing in a match, I guess that's probably where some of the scores are, where you're giving putts or you're riding your opponent's score if, you're out of a hole or something. But I like the Ireland book. I write it down as they come. They're legit. And especially in the Scotland book, because that was a story where I was actually trying to get better at golf. So I was really focused on score there. And I'm a numbers guy too. Like I put every score in the 8 months traveling America, all 50 states, and I put every score into the GIN handicap system. I post everything because I want to see like the analysis of like, okay, where am I trending? Am I getting better? Am I getting worse? So while I preach sometimes in my books sort of a more less numbers focused, more, dare I say, spiritual approach to just enjoying the game and your time and nature and all that stuff, which I think is important, I still want to know what I shot.
Right.
I still want to know.
Do you think your swing gets better or worse after playing that amount of golf?
Yeah, it's funny. I've noticed a pattern now with doing my third country that there is a sort of slow rise and improvement in scores and my game that kind of builds around like peaks at around like month 2 or say like halfway through the trip. And then there is definitely a point of diminishing returns where, because first I'm getting stronger, I'm getting in better shape, my swing is looser, and I'm just playing a ton, right? So I'm just figuring out how to golf my ball better. And then at some point, like exhaustion and weariness becomes a factor. And so with the America book, over 8 months, it was sort of a lot of peaks and valleys. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you definitely hit a wall. And it's like, looking at the Scotland book, my best golf was probably around the middle. And unfortunately, I was playing a British Open qualifier at the end.
Right.
Not to ruin the book for anybody. There were scores where you're thinking, man, if I would have just shot this then. But such is golf.
What I really appreciate about your story is you've taken some shots at it, right? Like you have tried to make the PGA Tour. You've tried to qualify for the British Open. Like you've taken some shots at it instead of just kind of being this guy that sits on the side and just becomes like a golf blogger. Like you're like, no, I want to be in this. I want to be part of this story. And I really love that. And that's what really appealed to me because I'm kind of the same way. But throughout your golf, like you've seen the bar, right? You've seen what it takes to get to a certain level. Which part of your game do you think got closest to like a level for the PGA Tour?
At the time, so I was doing Paper Tiger in like 2004. So at that time, I would have said definitely my driving was good enough. I mean, I'm a tall enough guy, and I'd gotten in the process of doing that book, I got strong. Like I had a personal trainer that was doing physical therapy, and people were kind of doing that then, not as much as it's a much more muscular game even now than it was then. But I could hit it. I could drive it, right? But like, I did not reach for a 5-iron with any love in my heart. And I was a decent putter, but those guys are exceptional putters. My short game was, again, decent. There's that's that thing. Like if someone went out and played with me at that point, when I'm like a +1, which is like as good as I ever got, they would look at all those elements of my game and say like, oh, you have all the pieces. And then it's like, well, if you go out in a tournament and you see the pieces that those guys have, you'd say I have half a piece, right? So, it was definitely a revelation of doing that book of how much great golf is out there, how many amazing players there are that we'll never know their names. Why do some guys break through and why others not? That was definitely a question I was trying to answer in that book.
So you just mentioned there's so many great golfers out there that will never know their names. And we're a podcast about the underdogs in sports, about the role players in sports, about all this stuff. Like, who's the best golfer you ever played with that nobody's ever heard of?
Oh, that I've played with. Well, when I did Paper Tiger, I went down to Q School in Latin America and played with an English gentleman who had just made the cut in the Open Championship at Carnoustie, and to watch him play in the way he approached, I changed his name in the book, which I generally do with characters when they don't know they're going to be in a book. But I think his name was Simon, and just to be paired with him for 2 rounds and play practice round with him, and how good he was, and I tried to follow his career, but I don't think it didn't go anywhere. He's good enough to he has that one moment where he breaks through, and he's playing with like Jose Maria on the weekend, and he's made the cut at the Open, and then he still can't get on the European Tour developmental tour.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's how hard it is.
I know.
And that, so he was just grinding, but he had all the shots. Like he just abused the golf course. He was just in control of everything he wanted to do, and to think that like that guy can't make it. It's a similar revelation with other pros that I've played with along the way, or mini tour guys. They really have it, and it's tough. It's really tough to break through.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of golf that you play, do you ever just get so frustrated? Because when I go out and play golf, like I said before, I'm ready to be done at about hole 14 usually, but you've always got another round scheduled, maybe another round later that day. Like, how often are you saying, man, I hate this game?
That's the absolutely craziest thing about it, and it's like a little bit sick that I still can't wait for the next first tee. I'm doing America. I'm playing 36 holes a day for 8 months, and in Scotland, I was doing 54 holes a day, and I guess it's I talk about it in the Scotland book. I have a pretty obsessive personality, and like to get after things, and the allure of, is this the round, right? Is that first tee? Maybe this is the round where it all goes right. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is a round where I'm as good as I think I am. And that is so, for me, addictive, hypnotic. I never, ever get bored of that. That there's always a chance. I mean, if I'm out there in the middle of a round and I'm really struggling, and if it's not a nice weather, whatever, there's any number of reasons where I can get tired with a round of golf. But I'd probably come in from that round and say, let's go back to the first tee. Like, I want to try again. Wow. So, yeah, it's a little unhealthy, but I think you have to be to do these kinds of stories, or the books would be a lot shorter or more boring, I guess.
Speaking of unhealthy, my favorite part of the Ireland book was how you talked about the food, right? In Ireland, like, they'd have these huge breakfasts where they would have potatoes and meat and sausages every morning. And you want to be polite to the bed and breakfast you're staying at, so you're eating like crazy all the time. But at the same time, you're walking so much, so you end up losing all this weight. But at the same time, your diet is so bad. I got to imagine in America, your America story, it's much different because you're not staying in these bed and breakfasts. So what's your go-to fast food restaurant here in America as you're trekking across the 50 states?
Yeah, it's funny. The Ireland was, the full Irish breakfast every day.
Yeah.
It starts off as this thing you love, and then it's this thing you're like having nightmares about because you have to wake up and eat this giant plate of food. And I don't eat breakfast anyway. I only eat it like when I'm traveling. So when I was on the road, I was in America. I was trying to sort of eat at as many local places, as I could. So Chicago pizza, Kansas City ribs, In-N-Out burger when I'm on the West Coast, lobster rolls in New England. I was trying to eat the cliched meal everywhere I went. But you of course you end up driving through Arby's, and that was probably my go-to, getting a little Arby's sauce on.
What's the order? Roast beef sandwich, mozzarella sticks.
I'm going probably a couple roast beef sandwich, and then the big cheddar guy with the cheese sauce.
Nice.
And that'll do me. But that's the funny thing, and it was definitely, I lost a lot of weight in Ireland, and I was eating and drinking everything, but I was walking 25 miles a day.
Yeah.
In Scotland, I was just from the golf, I was walking 15 to 20 miles a day, so I'm shedding pounds there. That was probably the most dramatic weight loss was in Scotland, and in America, I still managed to lose some weight because I was walking all the golf courses, even though I was driving around, spending most of my time in the car, eating trail mix or whatever.
Right. Now, one thing you talk about in, I think, that Scotland book too was Trump taking over some of the historic courses around the world. Do you think Trump's been good for the game or bad for the game?
Oh, tough one. I would say, I think in the Scotland book, I just do credit because
Yeah, you
not
were
a
pretty
popular
fair.
guy.
You were pretty fair.
I tried, and that was and I wrote that. You know, when the book comes out, we're in such a political atmosphere. You know, I caught flack from some people thinking the book was like anti-Trump or whatever, but
I didn't think so at all.
And you know, and it's funny. I wanted to tell them, like, I wrote this before he ever announced he was going to run for president. Like, this is pre-politics, right? So I was just evaluating as a course developer, and I think, like I say in the book, that he definitely deserves credit. He's putting money into golf. You know, there are other millionaires out there who are putting their money into yachts or whatever their pastime might be, or horse farms or things like that. But this guy spends money on golf, and anyone who's investing in golf or trying to get more people to play the game or giving the people a better environment in which to play it or a better guest experience, any of that, like, I'm for it. You know, I absolutely support that. Now, his taste in terms of what he did, like, to the look of Turnberry, I kind of objected to that. And that's, again, not political, just purely from the aesthetics of someone who's played a lot of links golf and loves old classic golf courses and doesn't need to have a Roman fountain in front of a classic Scottish links golf course. So, and I think that's fair. You know, we could all argue, like, hey, is our gold fixtures in the bathroom nice at an old Scottish links course? Yes or no? You know, and that's fine. So, but overall, I would say anyone that is investing in golf, I support that for sure.
Cool. Well, Tom, the way we end every episode of the Moonlight Graham Show is with the 5 big questions. And the first question here for you is, if you were to put together a foursome for tomorrow, who's the first call if you had anybody on the every person's an option for you?
Ooh, good one. Dad, of course. Bill Murray, who, if you read Get the America book, folks, and that might actually happen.
I think you played with him down in Kansas, right, in that one?
I did. Yeah, so and we had such a good time, Bill, and I'd probably throw in, and maybe, you know, it was fun playing with Bill and his brother Brian, so I might throw in Brian, but no. Then for my fourth, I go for a guy named Jimmy Dunn, who, again, and I feature, and he's in the America book, and is just a really, really special guy. Done a ton for golf, and if we had him in the group, we could literally play any course that we wanted to because he's a member at absolutely every one of them. So that would be a good group.
Nice. Second question, what's the most overrated course you've ever played? You know, had a lot of fanfare around it, and then you show up and it's like, man, this is a letdown.
Oh, come on. You're going to get me in trouble.
We only ask the hard-hitting questions here, Tom.
How you do? This is a hard-hitting podcast. I'll say, and this is at the time, because it was shut down and redone after I visited, but I was underwhelmed by Turnberry. I expected more sort of coastal cliffside drama, and there were many, many links in Scotland that had 1/10 of its reputation that I thought were more enjoyable. Now, after I played it for the Scotland book, they shut it down for a year and redid it. And it's supposed to be wonderful, so I'm hedging my answer there.
What's the favorite club in your bag?
Favorite club in the bag? Definitely driver, because it's the hardest to miss. And then I probably hit a lot of 9-irons from all sorts of distances. Like, I'll hit 9 from 80 yards to 150 yards. I like hitting like little knockdown, low, control-y, medium spin kind of shots, like link shots. Sort of punch 9-iron is definitely a go-to for me that I probably cultivated in Ireland and Scotland.
Have you ever had a hole-in-one?
I have had a hole-in-one.
Nice. How many? Just one?
I've had one hole-in-one, and it's funny. I've been, very fortunate to play all these courses around the world, and the top 100 in the world. I don't know. I played a lot of them, and I got my hole-in-one at a golf course called Wooden Lane, Walnut Lane in Philadelphia. That's like par 62 in the city. Very little grass. It's about a modest a golf experience as you can find. But the hole was 150 yards, and it went in. So,
beautiful. So you've probably had so many great golf experiences throughout your life, but is there one still out there? Is there like one dream golf experience that you got to have in that bucket list?
What's really left for me, I knock off some of the really big ones in the America book, and I knocked a big one off at the end of the Scotland book. What's left for me that I'm pretty eager to see is like Royal Melbourne and do Australia. I've been down there to golf before, but especially as someone who loves links golf, to get down there and just jam down in the sand belt. There's so many places I want to see there, and in New Zealand, that I don't know if that's the next book. I don't know, but that of my bucket list golf items remaining, that's definitely the one.
Nice. And final question here, Tom, is what's the best advice you've ever received?
I'd say that when I was told that what other people think of me is none of my business, that helped. That's something I probably need to remind myself of almost every day. Mm-hmm. So that was good advice.
I love that. Well, Tom, I appreciate you coming on the Moonlight Graham Show. It's been fun to get caught up, especially with, I've been a fan of yours for a while now, reading your books. I can't wait for the next one to come out. So it's been a pleasure to chat and to get you on the podcast.
Tim, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me and all the kind words, and best of luck. Hope to get back out there when all this is past and we can tee it up.
Sounds good. If you ever come through Des Moines again, let's play Waveland together.
I love Des Moines. I will. I'm. That's one of those courses I played, and I was like, this isn't the last time I'm playing here. So
cool.
I'm in.
Let me know. Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.